Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Sumit and I'm here with a use case in Mastering LWC Component Series. Today I'm excited to share with you a powerful use case in Salesforce Lightning Web Component involving parent-child communication. So using this use case, we will dive into how you can pass data between components and even we can call the child component functions from the parent components to dynamically update the child component. Whether you are new to LWC or you are looking to refine your skills, this tutorial or this use case will provide you a practical insight to enhance your Salesforce development projects. And yes, before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more updates, for more Salesforce tips and more updates on Salesforce tutorials. So here is the business requirement, and the business requirement is to show you a practical use case wherever we build a parent-child communication setup in LWC. And the requirement is the parent component will pass the selected account ID to the child component, and then the child component need to display related contacts using a data table. So in this session, in this video, I'll explore how the data can be passed between the parent and child components. Specifically, we'll be focusing on how to pass a parent or how to pass an account ID from the parent component to a child component, which then display related contacts. We'll also see how the parent can trigger actions in the child component, such as refreshing the contact list or to invoke an event to display the related contacts. By the end of this tutorial, by the end of this session, you will have a clear understanding of how to implement and leverage parent-child communications in your own Salesforce LWC project, which helps you ultimately improving your application's efficiency and user experience. So first of all, let me show you the practical implementation of this because this use case I have already incorporated in one of my applications. So let me show you that and then we'll see the coding part of it. So you can see this is the component and here is my account parent component and here is the related contact. So this is the parent component and child component. And in the parent component, what we have done, we have displayed a list of accounts and we allow user to select an account. And whenever a user select an account, it is going to pass the account ID to the child component. So as you can see, whenever I select an account, if I select account as test account one, so this ID will be passed to the selected to the related contact, related component. And then on child component, it is going to call a public function of the child component for to refresh the list of the contacts or to display the related contacts. So there is a public function we have defined on the child component, and that function get triggered. That function will be get called on from the parent component. No, on child component, what we have done on child component, as soon as the child component, it receives the account ID from the parent component. So this child component will fetch and display the contacts related to the received account ID using a data table. And as I mentioned, that the child component, it contains a public function that can be called by the parent component. So this is the practical implementation. Now let me show you the step-by-step implementation, especially to the coding part. So let's switch to the Visual Studio. And here you can see I've created two components, the parent component named as parent LWC and child LWC component. And along with that, we have created classes, LWC Apex class and LWC Apex class. So you can declare everything in one single class also, that will also work. So the very first step is we start with the parent component, and in parent component, as you can see, the requirement in the parent component is, first of all, we need to display the list of accounts in a data table. So therefore, what we did, we in the parent component, we started with the HTML, parent HTML, and in parent HTML, you can ignore this previous one. This is like a search box. So this is a lightning data table, which helps us to display the list of the accounts. So here I use a lightning data table, and key field is equals to ID. Data is equals to account record. Columns is equal to account column. So this will be the array of columns, which the list of columns, which will be going to define in the JavaScript of the client side controller. Also, I set one property called max row selection is equal to 1. The reason of setting this property is that maximum we can select only one item. So as you can see here, we can select only one value at a time. We can select only one account at a time, not more than one. So that's the purpose of this property. That's the use of this property. And on row selection, handle row selection, this is the custom function which we have declared in parent component JavaScript. And what's the purpose of this function? The purpose of this function is to track the account ID for the selected record. So as soon as we select an account, as soon as we select a record, if I select this record or this particular record, so whatever is the ID associated with that record, that ID will be extracted and that ID will be stored in a property by using this function. So that's the purpose of this handle row selection function. Now let's look at the JavaScript. So first of all, account record. This is a property, and this property I have declared here account record. And the purpose of this property is to store the list of accounts. Second is the account column, and here it is used to, here we have declared the column. So we specify the column labels and field names, and this is because we are going to display this in a data table. So it's need to declare this. Then handle row selection function. So handle row selection function is here. And in handle row selection function, we declare one constant variable called select rows is equals to event dot detail dot selected row. So whichever row will be selected, that row will be assigned. That row we have assigned will assign to the selected rows, and then we from that selected rows we fetch the ID, the value of the account ID is stored into selected account ID. Selected account ID is a property here. As you can see, that's a property. Select account ID is a property. So this property is used to store the account ID for the selected record. Okay, so now it's time to pass this account, the selected account ID to the child component. So it's time to define the child component, and here is the child component. So on child component, what we have done, we have declared one public property called account ID. In order to declare this public property, we took help of API decorator. On child component, this is the statement which helps us to call the child component. So see child LWC account ID is equals to selected account ID. What we are doing here, on this account ID public property, we will be assigning the selected account ID. So therefore, whenever we select an account, whenever we select a record, let's suppose I select here soap test account 1. So whatever is the ID for this selected account, that account will be passed to the child component account ID with the help of this statement. And to know more about how do we pass the value from parent to child, you can go through my previous video. In that video, I've explained about API decorators, the parent-child communication. I'll share the video description in the description below. You can look into that. Now on child component, now let's get back to the child component, because our final objective is to display the related contacts on the child component. So therefore, we'll be going to fetch we need to fetch the related contact based on the account ID. So therefore, on child component JavaScript, we import a function get related contact from LWC Apex class. So in LWC Apex class, there's a function called get related contact, and this get related contact takes one parameter named as account ID, and based on this account ID, it is going to fetch the first name and last name from the contact where account ID is equal to this, and it's going to return list of records. We may have more than one related contacts, or we may have one or nothing. So it depends on that. Based on the account ID, it's going to return. And once it then here we have declared one public function. As you can see on child component, this is a public function. So I just write here public public function on child component. So this is a public function on child component, and here API contact details handler and console.log account ID. This is just for testing. We can get rid of this if we don't want it. And here what we did, we call this function get related contact function. This function belongs to an Apex class, the server side controller class, and here we pass one parameter as an account ID. So as you can see, this Apex class function, the server side controller function takes account ID as an input. This ID we pass, and once it returns, once this query gets triggered, it will return a list of contacts, and those records we store into contact records. This property. And what's the purpose of this property? We use this property to display the related contacts on child component HTML using a data table. So here I have mapped it. So key field is equals to ID, data is equals to contact records, and column is equal to contact column. And this is the array of a column list. And here we display first name and last name. Now, the one of the major part here is that how do we trigger this function, because as you can see, this function we did not trigger anywhere here. We did not call this function anywhere here, neither on a button click, nor on a from a constructor or from a connected callback function. So this function, and we have declared this function as a public function using API decorator. So therefore, this function get triggered from parent component. So how from where do we call this function? So as you can see, while we call a child component, here we did not call that function. So we want to call that function on row selection. So let's switch there. So on row selection, on handle row selection, as you can see, I declare constant child component is equal to this dot template query selector c dash child dash LWC. So which component we click? Let's basically here we have C child tag is there, LW, this tag is there. And from this tag, basically from this tag is mapped to the child component, child LWC. And from this child component, there's a function called contact details handler. So it's going to trigger the child component public method, and make sure that this contact details handler will be a public function we have declared by using API decorator. If I declare this by using track decorator, then this function will not be accessible from the parent component. And when this function gets triggered, it is going to call the get related contact function, and then it display the related contact. And yes, in order to display the records on the parent component, in order to display the account list from the parent component, what we have done, we declare one function called connected callback function. And this is a default function, and this connected callback function get triggered whenever a component enters into a DOM. So on this function, I just call a function called get account list. And what's the purpose of this get account list? This get account list is going it is this get account list function, this belongs to LWC Apex class. Get account list, get accounts, yeah, here it is, get account list. And the purpose of this function is to fetch all the available account details and return back to the this LWC component JavaScript to the parent component one. And once it returns the list of records, then we map all the records to account records. Account record is a property here. It's an array property. It's a list property. And this account record we successfully mapped with the data table. So therefore, whenever we load a component, and as soon as the component enters into the DOM, it's going to display the list of accounts, and then we can proceed from there. So that's the way we can make a selection on the parent component. Based on the selection we made, based on the account we select, it will extract this account ID for the selected record. That account ID will be passed to the child component by using a function. Okay, and then it calls a function, the child component function. And on the child component function, we retrieve the related contacts and display the related contacts in a data table on a child component. So that's all about this use case. So in short, in this, we have created two component, parent and child component. So this setup, this use case, it gives you a complete understanding that how to manage the data flow and interaction between the parent and child component in LWC. So that's all in this video. We'll come up with some more use cases in Lightning Web Components. Till then, keep watching, keep visiting, keep coding. Have a nice day, everyone. Bye.